Muito bom dia de novo a todos os participantes que regressam aqui ao auditório e a quem nos segue também pelas redes sociais. É um prazer estar aqui de novo convosco para a penúltima sessão deste 6º Meetup do Digital Health Portugal, aqui em direto do Centro Hospitalar Universitário de Coimbra. Estamos no auditório principal. Eu queria também dar aqui uma palavrinha de agradecimento à equipe técnica que nos tem ajudado, porque no fim pode escapar. José Carlos Pereira, a equipe da Regi estão a fazer aqui maravilhas para conseguirmos que esta transmissão chegue bem a todos vós e que seja também uma experiência agradável para os oradores que estão aqui presencial. É um equilíbrio que não é nem sempre fácil. And now in English, welcome everybody. It's great to be here again, and we are now starting our second part of our broadcast, and it's good to have your presence on the social media. We are streaming on multiple channels: LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and it's great to have you watching us. We are doing this for you, and I hope you find it a useful event for you spending your time today. I'm pleased to host here what will be the session for Biobanks in the user's perspective. We have been attending this morning sessions on the creator's perspective, moderated by George Matthew, and raising up important points. We then had a panel on the business perspective, and where important and inspirational conversations were held. And now, finally, we are approaching the last but not least, should we say, the biobanks within the user's perspective. And this is some important points that we are going to raise here. So in this panel, and by alphabetical order, I have Afonso Duarte online, from an IC, a recently created agency for innovation and in the biosciences, governmental agency, result of a partnership with multiple stakeholders. We have also online Alexandre Guedes Silva, the president of the Multiple Sclerosis Society in Portugal, a very active society that has taken a decisive role in the pandemic area to major innovations and collaborations with Minister of Healthcare. Also a pleasure to have you here today, Alexandre, virtually. And we have also Professor Cristina Gavina, which is a surname not usual in Portuguese, from the Hospital Pedro Spano in the ULS Matosinhos, and also professor University of Porto. It's really a pleasure to have you here, taking your busy schedule and also with your white uniform from the hospital. It's good to bring a little bit of a sense of healthcare here to this audience. And right here with me, further from me, it's Tamara Milagre, President of Evita. It's a pleasure to have you here in presence, and also Professor Lino Gonçalves, closer to me in the center. Here is the President of the Portuguese Society of Cardiology, and also one important partner in the creation of this biobank in Coimbra. And definitely we could start here with a question that could be an overall question for our discussion, as we would like this to be a free-flow conversation. There are some presentations prepared, but we don't want to risk, given the technical conditions here. So these presentations will be available later on. But so let's start perhaps by posing this question, and we could start with the alphabetical order, if you like, with Afonso Duarte starting us. How can we make biobanks to serve the users even better? And
can you hear me? Yes. So first of all, thank you for the invitation to be here. It's really a great pleasure to be presenting, to be talking here about researchers and clinical research and the use of biobanks by researchers. I think it's a key moment now in thinking about the strategy that we are developing at EU level and national level. So the way we look at biobanks is these are really crucial for the success of clinical research. These are really a part of the clinical research, the modern clinical research as we see it, because when we think about research nowadays, it really needs to be transversal and need to bring lots of players on board to find new to find answers to the new questions that are being asked at clinical level and biomedical level. One of the key issues that we see for the success of these biobanks, and this is something that has already been discussed a little bit in the morning in the first sessions, and has been discussed in the different biobanks that we interacted with at national level, is the need to collaborate and share resources. So to create networks. This is one of the fundamental things that we see at EU level and at national level. So what we are looking at when we see the strategy at EU level is really to bring together all these facilities and all these infrastructures and all this knowledge, because this is not just to have a biobank with a repository. This is also the knowledge that is there and also the good practices. And now with the digitalization of biobanks, it's even easier now to create networks, to create synergies between these different organizations and the researchers and the clinicians. One very important aspect that we also think when looking at biobanks is how to maximize the impact of that information that is there. Earlier in this session, we heard about the industry perspective, but also thinking about the researchers. How can we increase this impact? And this is something very interesting, because if we start leveraging all these resources and combining all the know-how and the best practices between biobanks and between researchers, we can definitely increase the impact of clinical research, of the research that's being done in the academia, also in the hospitals. And we can increase, of course, raise public awareness about this work. And this is very important because the public nowadays is even more interested in knowing what's going on at clinical research. So this, I would give just these hints to start the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a good way to start and a segue for me to go into Alexandre Silva, who kindly suggested me also to introduce here the topic of trust, right? So Alexandre, how could we increase the levels of trust for citizens to take part in biobanks?
Hello, everybody. I hope that you are listening me with quality. My network here is floating a lot. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be in this distinct forum. Trust for us is the most important and valuable asset. We need to trust in order to participate and be able to join the efforts of research. And what normally happens is that we are just somebody who provides something, and we are not involved in the design of the research. Most of the time, we are not able to understand the results, the published results of the research, because they are at a level that average people cannot understand. So what I think is that we need to communicate and to be able to interact in a language that is feasible for all stakeholders, especially for the patients. The patient must be involved from the beginning in the design of the experiment, in the design of the initiative, in this case, in the design of the biobank, because if they are empowered with the notion that they are part of something that is bigger than them and that is essential for the development of knowledge, they would be more keen to support, more keen to create more adhesion to to the initiative, and to create more trust, community engagement in the different initiatives, the different aspects of research. So my point is that we need to work together in order to create an environment of trust, an environment of co-creation, which means that at some point the people that are asked to participate, they feel empowered as part of the scientific team, and they have vests like the scientists. Why not? And try and they can also be part of the discussion of the scientific results. And that's what I think that can create trust and can really have impact in the governance, impact in the ethical issues, especially impact in understanding what is the real goal and the real utility of the different initiatives.
Fantastic. Alexandre, thank you so much. Following alphabetical order, because this also gives way for our guest speakers to prepare their turns. Cristina Gavina, what is really the matter here? Why can't patients be involved in the planning of the research process even more?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and join such a bright and shiny society and also faculty. I think that we have to be aware that nowadays we're not just talking about patients, we are also talking about individuals. And this is quite important because we have to have access to biomarkers, and biobanks are all about not repository, as it was said, but also to create new information and knowledge that can help actual individuals. Furthermore, to be able to have some kind of precision medicine. And what I believe is that right now we have to make citizens, common citizens, understand that they can actually collaborate in research if they are able to understand that what they are doing now will make us create better responses, better management strategies for the future. And with that, we, of course, we will help them having this new drugs or new strategies that will have less impact in their quality of life. We are going to give them the best results possible with those interventions. And they have to understand that their role is going to be really important. About co-creation with patients and other individuals from the community, I think this is something that is building up also in science everywhere. So task forces, guidelines are now inviting patients to come across and try to figure out what they also find from the results of the clinical trials, what they find more important for them. But I think that also clinical trials are now having patient and public involvement that actually helps to design studies that are not only more feasible from the point of view of the patient, because we have to consider sometimes we're asking them for a lot, so a lot of visits, a lot of planning, and it takes also a lot of commitment from the patient, but also because some of the questions that we find very important may not be the ones that the patients want to see answered. So it is really important to listen to their opinion and to be able to integrate some of their inputs into our science. And I think that biobanks come in because they are really important if we want to have this tailored and precision medicine. And we have to make patients realize that their contribution to these biobanks can actually make a change for the future and help not only treat patients, but maybe diagnose better and find the pathways that are underlying many diseases that are particularly common in our society and can have huge impact if you actually can understand them better. So I think that we have to put the citizen inside the research, not only the patient, but the citizen. And we have to make them understand that what we're doing is not just for academic purposes. We're not just some scientists very interested and very keen on seeing strange things and finding out things to publish. We are actually concerned about their health, and we want to improve their quality of health, and also to improve the answers and the right answers for the right patients.
An applause here from our guest speakers. Thank you for his lovely contribution. And let me take now this for the other side of the perspective, or reinforcing this side of the perspective of the medical researcher, with Professor Lynn Gonçalves, which is a renowned professional, and that's also a key stakeholder in the creation of this biobank in Coimbra. So tell us a little bit about the story and how important it is that a scientific society can partner with the biobank and make it as a valuable organization for the society as a whole.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation, the kind invitation that allows me to be here today. It's a big pleasure. And I'd like to ask permission to use the Portuguese Society of Cardiology hat now, and say that basically our contribution to the biobank was because we were concerned about one situation. As a scientific society, our mission is to reduce the burden of cardiovascular diseases in the Portuguese population. And looking to the national data that we have, we see that cardiovascular disease mortality was being lower and lower since the 70s in the last century. But we realized that in the last few years, somehow this curve, instead of going down, it's flattening. So the question is, what is going on here? How can we understand better this situation? How can we make sure that the curve still goes down and we reduce the mortality of our patients? Looking further into the data, our national data, we saw that, for instance, in between 2014 and 2018, which was just before the pandemics, and there was no, confusion in the impact of the pandemics on the data. We saw that in those 4 years, we were able to get a reduction in mortality as far as coronary artery disease was concerned. So we were able to save 200 lives in our country every year in these 4 years. But looking to heart failure diseases, we saw that during those 4 years, there was an increase in mortality. So more 800 people died in our country due to heart failure. So if we want to make the line, the curve going down, perhaps the good target would be heart failure, right? And that's what the Portuguese Society of Cardiology decided to do, is to target heart failure, which seems to be one of the major problems in terms of cardiovascular mortality nowadays. And we do know that the situation can only become worse for the future because our population is aging, and we do know that the prevalence of heart failure increases with age. Now, the problem is that we did not have reliable data, because the last data that we had in our Portuguese Society of Cardiology was already 20 years old. It was the EPICA study, and the EPICA study said that the prevalence of heart failure in Portugal was 4%, or 4.4%. So it means like 400,000 Portuguese have heart failure in Portugal. But looking in our daily practice, we had the perception that this was not totally true, and that reality in 2024 or 3 or 2 or 1 is significantly different. And that's why the Portuguese Society of Cardiology decided to start a study, observational study, that is called Portos study, in order to try to figure out what is the current prevalence of heart failure in Portugal. And it started already last year in September, and it started in a very rural area in Serpa, in the south of Portugal. And Professor Cristina Gavina can give more details about how this study works in terms as far as the population is concerned. But I want just to say that although the Portuguese Society of Cardiology is a big society in Portugal and a very sophisticated and complex society, a very strong and robust society, we are not able to do this alone. And since we were evaluating the population, we would like very much to take the opportunity to go a little bit further and eventually get the support of other entities. So we were able to join efforts with the Nova Medical School, and they were able to help us to identify the members of the population in the different regions of Portugal that were representative of the population locally. They are also supporting us in terms of statistical analysis. But also, of course, we had the need, since we were interviewing these members of the Portuguese population, we were needing also to have the support of a biobank. And we were extremely lucky that here at the Coimbra University Hospital Center and Coimbra Academic Center just did it last year, created the biobank. And the Portuguese Society was actually the first customer. And we are very happy with that. And it has been a quite amazing experience. We are planning to collect more than 6,000 blood samples from these patients. So we are going to have, for sure, a very robust set of data. But of course, we had the need to also to get some financial support, and we get it from an unrestricted grant from AstraZeneca, from industry. Otherwise, we would not be able, because this is an extremely complex and costly project. And we are very happy that they were able to support us. And of course, I need to say that we are also very honored that we have the high patronage of His Excellency, the President of the Republic, who already put a lot of pressure on us. He wants us to finish the study by the end of this year, and hopefully we will be able to do it in November. So please stay tuned, because according to some of the preliminary data that perhaps Professor Cristina Gavina may share with us, the data that we are collecting and generating is really, really amazing. And the biobank is going to potential this impact of this study. Just to give you an example, I was last week in the European Heart House in Nice, and I met with the president-elect of the European Society of Cardiology, Tom Lucher. He was also editor-in-chief of European Heart Journal. He's currently the main cardiovascular journal in the world. And we were chatting a little bit, and he asked me what we were doing, the Portuguese Society were doing in Portugal. And I said, well, we are doing the Porto study. And he said, what is that? And I said, what the Porto study was all about. And the next question that he asked me, can we collaborate with you? So really interesting, the kind of answer that he gave to us. So indeed, we are very excited, very enthusiastic about this project, and working as a team, as I said. I'm pretty sure that we will do a great job. And the Professor Cristina Gavina is also here today as a co-chair of the executive committee of the Porto study.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I have reserved 10 minutes in our talk time for, if we have time, 10 minutes in the end. Cristina, if you want to give a presentation of Portos, if you have some slides, and we can use the last 10 minutes of our session to receive this information, because I understand that there are lots of viewers in our channels, LinkedIn channels, our researchers and medical researchers, and perhaps they would like to have an advanced information. If that's okay, we have 10 minutes in the end reserved. So still, we have almost half an hour to go on the conversation. And of course, users of Biobank are also patients indirectly from the results of the research that it can generate. Tamara, what's your take on Biobanks?
So thank you very much for the opportunity and the invitation. So I'm the president of a patient organization that supports families affected by hereditary cancer syndromes. So we do not exist in Portugal. We do not have data at all because our national cancer registry does not discriminate hereditary from sporadic cancer. So we have a problem. And talking here about biobanks, I think it's very important to take in account patient registries, to make them interoperable with the biobanks, because we need a more global approach to the health situation of a user. And the biobanks, they fill up because nice doctors convince them to sign the informed consent. But to engage also already still healthy people, we want to gain knowledge. We want to have as much as possible in our biobanks. So we need to educate the citizens. They need to understand that this is a very good thing. They need to understand that, of course, the University of Coimbra is confirming the GDPR compliance. I mean, nobody would doubt that. What we found on our problem in hereditary cancer, as we do not have data at all, and when we talk to the registry, they told us it would not be possible to storage sensitive genetic data, which is not true because we have the technology. We are in 2023. So we decided to create patient-generated data, bottom up. Top down, nothing is happening. Okay, let's do it. Of course, we had to create a private consortium to finance the project, which is huge. And we have like 8-10 huge pharmaceutical companies in our private consortium, also diagnostic labs, health insurance. So for the sake of transparency, we just wanted to join a lot of partners, and also for the sake of the quantity of money that is needed, keep our patient-led, patient-centered patient registry alive, because projects there are apps and so on and so forth. We were looking at the gaps we identified during the last years in hereditary cancer. First point, no data at all. Okay, identified. Second point, only 20 to 30% of genetic mutation carriers with high risk for hereditary cancer are identified nowadays. That's an affirmation from Nicolino Gabruga. She's the leader of European Reference Network Genturis, Genetic Tumor Risk Syndromes. I didn't make that up. In cancer patients, we lose 50% of hereditary cancer patients because they do not get tested, or they get tested for one special gene that has a commercialized drug available, but there are other genes involved in certain types of cancer. So you have a gene, you have several organs that can be at risk. You have an organ, there can be several genes that can be involved in that syndrome. So hereditary cancer is a very complex situation, and we need to raise genetic literacy in the scientific, medical, and civil society. So we also offer on our Evita platform. So let me just finish the gaps. So we identify really badly genetic mutation carriers. Hereditary cancer is early onset of disease. We are talking about a 27-year-old pregnant woman that dies 2 years later, leaving 2 little daughters orphans because we did not identify her as a genetic mutation carrier earlier. And we even laughed at her, that was the case with her doctor, when she said, I feel a lump here. Child, you are way too young to have a breast cancer. Those are changes from pregnancy. Yeah, okay. So we have a lot of work to do. And the other thing is the panel testing, what I was saying. Yeah, we need to look, to ask the right question. We cannot only look for genes that have implication in the actual treatment of the cancer patient. We need to think about the other generations, because if we identify genetic mutation carrier, we can save their children and we can end the mutation in the next generation with pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. It's a fertilization in vitro, and you choose at the 3rd day out of 8 cells, you see which embryo has the mutation. And when I talk about a Li-Fraumeni syndrome, that is giving you cancer at early childhood, your whole life long in all over the place, it's worth it, you can believe me. And then we have a complete lack of resources. Yeah, we have waiting times. There are 1 year for genetic counseling, 1 year for the result, and the years for preventive surgeries I cannot count anymore now after the pandemic. So we created a Vita platform to answer all these gaps. What we are doing is, this platform is for anybody preoccupied with their cancer risk because they have a personal personal history of cancer, because they have a family history of cancer, because they are preoccupied because 1 in 2 will get cancer. That's a fact. So everybody that is preoccupied can register. It's for any genetic mutation carrier, healthy or sick, and it's for any cancer patient. Again, we lose 50% of hereditary cancer patients because they are not identified. And we need to save their families. So we will attribute a risk score. There's very easy question. Who had at what age which type of cancer, maternal, paternal line? And then we understand who should have genetic counseling. We can offer genetic counseling on our platform, reducing waiting time from 1 year to 3 weeks maybe. We can offer psychological counseling. We saw during pandemic there was an explosion of emotions, of depressions, of anxiety attacks. We did not have hands to answer to all the people that reached out for help because they had this Damocles sword over their head, which would give them cancer at any moment. And nobody was looking at them because they were not urgent. So psychological counseling we can do. And we can centralize the whole clinical process of the user, because the user is in charge of his data. So we centralize the whole clinical process. He can upload the results in any doctor appointment. He's diagnosed in hospital A. He will be treated in B. He had surgery in C, and he has an accident in Algarve when he's at holidays. And we double and triple exams. We are producing waste in the order of millions of euros. We could reinvest much more intelligent if we would prevent this kind of waste. And anyways, every preventable disease that is happening is also waste for our system. So Evita platform wants to be interoperable. I cannot talk more about it. The time is running. I'm so sorry. It's a complex project, but please reach out to us. We are keen to collaborate with anybody of you. We want to drive research. We can educate users that they will give their data for research, and we will take care also of the results of research and inform them when their data were used.
So Biobank Coimbra could be a potential partner.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, good. It will be good that after this event, that partnership could start, because that's also the purpose of our meetups here. And we have plenty of time after lunch for the guest speakers. There's lunch offered to discuss that. That's awesome. Thank you so much. It's really interesting to see the passion and the knowledge you carry on this cause that you are serving so well. Back to Afonso Duarte, I see. How can we make biobanks even more effective, Afonso?
No, thank you for the question, and I think it's really great to answer to that question after just listening to these other colleagues from the board today, because what we think is that we really need to create synergies between the researchers, the clinicians and the patients and the users, because the users are going to be all of us, like the colleague was saying a while ago. The users are going to be the clinicians that are going to be in front of a patient, explaining the disease they have, and using the information that they extracted from a biobank and the knowledge they extracted from there, the researcher in the university that's going to use, and also the citizen that can share their data, their health data or their tissue for some kind of biobank that they are interested in. And this is fundamental. So I think one of the two main points here would be the creation of these synergies and these networks. And when we look at the big projects, like Tamara was pointing out, these big projects that can be at Europe, need to be at European level. When we are speaking about biobanks, it's very important that we reach the highest number of people and the highest number of samples. So when we think about EU level, we really need to be thinking about joining everybody in one spot where the knowledge can be shared, the good practices can be shared, so that we really have biobanks that are resilient, sustainable, and they can bring the impact to the end user. And the end user at the end is the person that has one disease that was discovered, it's going to be discovered. So I think that's very important. And one way towards that impact and those synergies is really, and we see that now starting to be more in the agenda of the politicians, and that's the literacy. It's very important to create more and more actions on literacy. And this can go at EU level, that can also go at local level. So when you go to your primary care system, so for example, to meet your GP, to know something, when you are waiting, you can learn something in the waiting room. You can be put in contact with knowledge on personalized medicine, and personalized medicine is very connected now with biobanks also, because it's really huge. It's going to have a huge impact on this. So it's very important that we start creating more and more activities on health literacy and digital health literacy, so that the population is more informed and can ask for more, because the population wants to know that they don't want to be sick, they want to be healthy. So how can we share so much knowledge that researchers and clinicians have now to the population, so that they know and they can ask for more. And I think these are two very important points, creating synergies between all the stakeholders. And like Alexandre was saying, like in a co-creation, we can do this. And we see this, the European big flagship projects in clinical research where biobanks are included. They include the whole of users. So from the clinician to the researcher, to startups, small and medium enterprises, and also the end users, the patients and the citizens. And this is very important, because it really creates a nice ecosystem where the new infrastructures like a biobank, it's going to be built by everybody, and then everybody can use it. And I think that's definitely the way forward on this stage.
Thank you so much. Alexandre, over to you. And again, trust, I think, is needed, right?
Yeah, but trust normally is a process that you need to care about and to nurture in order to grow.
Mention that. Okay. Christina, Gavina, you will have the floor in the end, but maybe you would like to add something to fill in the meantime. For trust.
We are getting some feedback. I think we're okay now. Well, I think that one of the problems that we have actually with the users, with the patients themselves or the individuals themselves, is of course they're scared about how this data is going to be handled, and if there is going to be any kind of leakage or any kind of possibility that insurances or institutions as such can actually have access to the data, and that can be turned on in a bad way for them. So they will be discriminated in a negative way for that. So we have to make people understand that the way we're working today is really, really safe, that everything is anonymized. And even when they give us permission, as is happening in portals, to have a linkage with the electronic health records in the future for a cohort that we have of normal individuals that we want to see what happens and if there are any biomarkers actually that can help us to identify those that are going to have incident heart failure. It is important to make them realize that what we're asking them is not going to be in any way accessed by any other source and for any other purpose than research and knowledge. So I think it is very important to make people aware that the way we're doing things and the harmonization that we're doing between biobanks is going to allow for that confidentiality, which I think is of the utmost importance if we want people to collaborate with us.
Okay, I think Alexandra, you are back online. Gonçalves, your turn in the equation.
Yeah, coming back to the porter's experience, it has been very much rewarding, and we are seeing not only other diseases beyond heart failure, because once you connect with these people of our population, you are able to detect other diseases that many times are not aware of. And also, it's going to be very interesting to look at the data at the end of this year, because we have the perception that despite the fact that we are a very small country as compared to others in Europe, we still have a lot of heterogeneity in terms of healthcare, in terms of diseases. We see differences in, for instance, in Alentejo as compared to the other areas of the country, and the population is looking to our big truck, that is big and red truck that is traveling around the country, as a point of contact to health professionals. We saw many times people coming with their file under the arm, and they take the opportunity to ask the health professionals in the truck what is their opinion about their situation. So we understand how important this situation is to comfort the patients and the population. They feel that we are close to them. So it's not only the Portuguese Society of Cardiology, it's also the health professionals are worried about them. We want to help them the best we can. Of course, that there are technicalities associated with this situation that we had to deal with. For instance, once you detect some kind of disease, of course, the Portuguese Society of Cardiology cannot take responsibility of the follow-up of this patient. So what we try to do is to reconnect this person into the national health system and make sure that there is the point of contact, and then everything moves forward beyond that. But once you get out of your office, once you get out of the big hospitals or big cities, you go to the real world in our country, you detect a totally different reality that is as much important as any other ones. So I do recommend other societies, other scientific societies, to do the same as the Portuguese Society did. And we are also very happy to see that even inside the society, the Portuguese Society of Cardiology, other groups are also starting to become interested in the biobank. For instance, our Arrhythmia Association sent us a letter to the board of the Portuguese Society of Cardiology asking permission to have access to the biobank and how can they proceed to study arrhythmias, and they are particularly interested in arrhythmia that is quite frequent also in our population, which is atrial fibrillation. So there is a new world over there, and the biobanks helped us to see this new world, which was not the case before.
Very well. Alexander, should we give it a try now?
Okay, let's try. I'm so sorry that you didn't be able to connect with me. From our from our perspective, multiple sclerosis had been a privileged area of development in the past decade, and in reality, biobanks were fundamental for the development of the new medicines, and we are grateful to science about these results, because for many of us, multiple sclerosis became a normal chronic disease and not a sentence for life, and that's why the Multiple Sclerosis International Federation are now launching by itself research programs. And in many of those research programs, namely in the progressive areas of the disease, brain biobanks are fundamental. So it's not difficult to explain to a person with MS that their collaboration is fundamental for the discovery of the disease and basically to improve and create new solutions for their quality of life. And what I feel that is important is we need to educate our patients about this reality. So, as Afonso Duarte mentioned, health literacy is a must. We must create knowledge that could be available to everybody about science. And what we do in the multiple sclerosis environment internationally is that we ask our scientists, we ask all the teams that are collaborating to improve the knowledge and the quality of life of people with MS to give them message in plain language, in language that everybody can understand, can be motivated and can adhere to the message. So from my point of view and from our perspective, we need to communicate science to the patients, and we must do it in a permanent way, not just episodically, but permanently. We need to report, we need to create discussions about the results, and mainly we need to create a positive environment in which everybody can be involved without being afraid of signing very complex and legalist documents that are required. And for everybody in the multiple sclerosis, normally they understand that the legal complexity of the informed consent is just a pro form and nothing more or nothing else than a pro form. So from my perspective, please involve us, and would be very keen to participate in the research quest and basically in the development of the tools in which the biobanks are one powerful tool to the research and to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandre, and this for good news for Coimbra Biobank, two potential partners here, two patients associations ready to cooperate. So that's good news. And as promised, 10 minutes for the Porto study. Everybody is expecting some...
I would like to add a comment, a last comment
Sure.
also for my second round.
You can do that right now or after the study, what you prefer. We have time.
I think right now because
Okay.
and we want to
close
really
to the
know
study.
about the study. I'm really super interested. So just there is a very good document that was elaborated by 130 relevant European stakeholders regarding the successful patient involvement in cancer research. Of course, this document is transferable to any other chronic disease, but look it up. I can send it to the organization, so they send it around. If you are not sure when and where you can involve which kind of patient, because you have different levels of involvement. You have the patient, you have the patient advocate that does not necessarily have the disease. You have a patient expert, and so on and so forth. So we have this document on the German Ministry of Research website. It's downloadable, but I can send it around. That's one point I wanted to let you know. And the other point is that we really, I was so excited to talk about this, and I do not remember.
You will have the chance after the presentation, because we still have 1 minute or so after the presentation. Cristina Gavina, the floor is yours. I'm not sure if you're able to present share screen. We didn't test that in this environment. Let's see if we can do it.
Yeah, maybe it won't be. Maybe it won't be possible to present slides, but I don't need slides actually to explain exactly what we're doing in Portos. So maybe it's better just to discuss it and to explain what was the objective of this study. So as Professor Lino Gonçalves said, we have pretty much the idea that there was a need for more information about heart failure. This is where we're failing, actually, and this is a growing pandemic, and this is going to be really a pandemic. And the problem was that we had to have numbers that could be actually representative of the Portuguese population, and for that we went for the experience of Nova Medical School, which already have done some epidemiological works in Portugal in other areas that could actually help us to design the trial, this kind of study. And for that we did a population cross-sectional study, trying to be representative of all the regions of Portugal, and using people that are actually in the lists of their GPs all over the country. And for that we had aleatorized, so randomized people with different age range and sex, and also representativity of rural and urban communities, so that we could actually have 5,600 patients or participants in this case that could be representative of the Portuguese mainland population. And our idea was to, of course, our main purpose was to have the prevalence of heart failure, but not only the prevalence of heart failure, but also the characterization of the type of heart failure, because we have two main types of heart failure, which are completely different in the way we approach them and manage them. And that was also important because it also has to do with this aging of the population, that it is changing the type of heart failure that we're getting. So you can have the same presentation, but the heart behaves differently, although the presentation in terms of symptoms and signs is the same. So for that, we chose people above 50 years old, because we know that under 50 years old, prevalence is really low. It was going to be very hard to find these patients. And these are not actually the ones we're trying to tackle when we see big numbers and have to have health policies that can actually help to contain this problem. And what we did was we have actually started a mobile clinic, which is a large red truck, as Professor Lino said, that has the possibility of seeing 50 people in the same day that go through a setting of evaluations that start with symptoms and comorbidities evaluations, the medicines they're under. So a lot of important information baseline. And after that, what we do is have NT-proBNP, which is a biomarker that actually came from this analysis of Biobanks. And it's probably with troponin the best biomarkers we have in cardiology. And that is the gatekeeper for knowing if patients or people can really have heart failure. So with that, we could try to reach out to the ones that have higher levels of NT-proBNP and get them through a second round of evaluation in the same truck, which is doing an echocardiogram that can actually find the changes, the structural and functional changes that can be underlying the heart failure condition. And with that, we get a lot of information about these people, and we are also being able to realize if these patients also have other conditions that are very important and impactful in terms of mortality and morbidity, such as atrial fibrillation that we were also talking about, because we're doing an EKG of one lead, and afterwards, if there is actually atrial fibrillation, we do a 12-lead EKG. And also, we have the chance of finding other diseases that can be underlying some kind of structural change that cannot be related to the traditional heart failure patient, but that can be impactful for the society, which is valvular heart disease. And we've been finding a lot of that too. So in a way, the idea of joining a biobank in this big project was, of course, a very, very, very important topic for us. And it was something that we discussed largely, not only because we didn't only want to have patients, we also wanted to have individuals, normal individuals, because that's where the science is coming from, right? You don't just want to see people that have the disease and see prognostic factors, but you also want to know what makes them different from the other ones that don't have the disease. So we had this huge discussion also with our funder about, of course, because biobanks are expensive, as you know, about the importance of having more information for the future. And I believe that with this information, we're going to be able to help a lot of research, not only in the cardiovascular area, but probably many other areas, because we're going to have a representativity of the Portuguese population in terms of individuals that have no diseases that are at least known about. So I think that we have here a unique chance to be able to give a lot of information that can actually tailor the way we are approaching these people and the way they're going to have chances of being better treated or to prevent better their diseases in the future. So we also asked for the linkage for electronic health records for 5 years for these people. It's extremely important because we're going to need that too.
As I was signaling, we have 2 minutes to conclude, and it's perfect this timing. Okay, so last 2 minutes, Tamara, your thoughts come up?
Yes. Again.
Okay, I thought so.
So my temporary Alzheimer went away. So a very nice example for the wonderful use of biobanks and patient engagement in genetic disorders. You have quite often, you have some findings, you do not know how to interpret them. Those are variants of unknown significance. So you have a patient with a certain cancer that would fit in this kind of gene, but it's a VUS, a variant of unknown significance. So you do not really know how to manage clinically that patient because it's not identified as a pathogenic mutation. So you go to the patient and you tell him, invite all your larger family and let us check all the members for the same mutation and the history of cancer in there. So first degree cousins, second degree cousins even. So invite them all, we get them checked for exactly the same mutation. And if we find that mutation in several relatives. Thank you, Alzheimer's back. So relatives, and they even had some kind of those cancers that would fit that gene, then you can reclassify the significance of that gene. that is very impactful for many families. And so this wouldn't be possible without biobanks.
Okay, cool. So a good message for biobanks and an opportunity is here. Our time is up. We could be here for hours. It's a privilege and an honor for me to be the host of this panel. I learned a lot and I've seen opportunities happening, and this is also the reason why we are here. Thank you so much, dear guest speakers. Thank you so much, remote speakers, and for your time here. And it's lovely to have your beautiful faces here in this mosaic we are facing in the auditorium. On our back of our audience. Thank you so much, physical audience, for being here with us, taking your precious time for this morning. And we are going now to closing session. I kindly invite you to go to the auditorium, and we leave space for the next session. I call to the floor Bonnie Clipper and Carl Sant, CEO of this beautiful organization where we are here today. And Bonnie Clipper, they're going to do the session. And online we have also with us Ambassador Luis de Almeida Sampaio, esteemed ambassador. I'm so sorry that I think I left you in the loop without giving you the link for the session. So sorry for the stress I caused this morning. Apologize deeply. So now the floor is complete here. I think that in terms of these final interventions here, the last contribution will be from Carl Schantz, who is the chair of this session. Dr. Carl Schantz will do the last final words. Okay. And we give the floor now to Dr. Luis de Almeida Sampaio, who is online ambassador of Portugal in the Czech Republic, to this closing session on a little bit of a background on the origin of this interesting institution that was recently created. Ambassador, the floor is all yours from Prague.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And first of all, congratulations to the organizers, to the participants, and to the broader auditorium. I have been following this morning throughout the different interventions, the panels, the presentations. I learned a lot. And so thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for that. This is a very important event, and my contribution will be a very modest one. I am only going to try to highlight a dimension that is not that well known, or at least is not sufficiently known, and that could have an importance for biobanks in general, for Coimbra Biobank, but also for everything related to digital health, indeed global digital health. And let me go directly to the main topic of my contribution. We all know that in Portugal there are many, already dozens of clinical and academic centers, joining hospitals and other medical institutions with universities, their medical studies faculties, and that works throughout the Portuguese health landscape in different manners. Some of these centers, they are real players and they are very performant. Others are still in their inception and starting to assert themselves in the medical and health Portuguese internal debate. What is unique about Coimbra, about the clinic and academic center of Coimbra, is an event, an organization that started out in Germany in 2007. In 2007, the then German Chancellor Angela Merkel organized the G8 summit in northern Germany, in a place called Heiligendamm. And it was still G8 because Russia was still part of that format. Today it would be the G7, but then it was still G8. And one of the key takeaways of that Heiligendamm G8 summit, an initiative of the German Chancellor, was the creation of the M8 Alliance, Medical Aid Alliance. And the objective was from the outset to create a real Champions League of medical international institutions that would share knowledge, experience, data, biobanks, and that would contribute to tackle global health problems. It was created under the aegis of the Charité University in Berlin, and every year there is a World Health Summit organized in Berlin within the context and the framework of M8 Alliance. At the very beginning, only very well-known international institutions were part of the M8 Alliance. Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, Charité, of course, many imposing international, worldwide known and famous institutions. And then, some years after, in 2014, there was an opportunity, a window of opportunity for Coimbra to enter the M8 Alliance. And that was extremely important for Portugal, for Coimbra, of course, but also for my country, because it represented the international recognition of the excellence of health care, health institutions, medical faculties of Portugal. So the reasons why Coimbra was accepted to be part of the M8 Alliance are related to these dynamics that was created within the clinic and academic center, joining efforts, not only the university, the first and foremost, the faculties of medicine and also of pharmacy, the hospital of Coimbra, that Carlos Santos, my friend, is now the director of the executive board. And I love to repeat that the Coimbra Hospital is not only the only one hospital, Portuguese hospital, that is part and parcel of the M8 Alliance, but it is also the biggest hospital in Portugal. And this is also important to bring to the surface of our debates, because in a country as centralized as Portugal, where when we talk about big medical institutions, we immediately think about the bigger cities, it is important to time and again remind that the Coimbra Hospital is the biggest hospital in Portugal. There is also a very important dimension related to business companies that dwell in pharmaceutics, but also in research, in vaccines, and they are very innovative. Some of those companies are so-called gazelle companies that create new employment, that represent very successful examples in business, and they are located in our small-scale Silicon Valley, very close to Coimbra in the central region of Portugal. In order to be able to internationalize itself and to participate fully in this very highly demanding context of the M8 Alliance, the clinic and the academic center created an international label. It is called Coimbra Health. And that is under that label, Coimbra Health, that Coimbra participates in the M8 Alliance and it participates in an extremely honorable way, because every conversation I have, every conference I participate, I only hear the praise about Coimbra Health and its uniqueness, because again, it is extremely important to recognize that not belonging to Lisbon and Porto, to a city that is not one of the biggest cities in Portugal, it is extremely important to recognize the impact that Coimbra Health, participating in M8 Alliance, can bring and can bridge in order to balance some disequilibrium that still persists in Portugal. So it is an invaluable contribution to Portugal, but also to the Portuguese central region, and also to Coimbra city itself. So there are a lot of political, economic, and financial implications. Coimbra Health engages in discussions almost on a permanent basis with the European institutions, with the European Investment Bank. We have regular meetings with many prominent personalities involved in global health matters and also in innovative research. Last week we had a meeting with the Commissioner Maria Gabriel, which is responsible, as you know, for research, education, and many other related matters of interest to Coimbra Health and to global health problems. So I believe that it is very useful that you, the Coimbra Biobank, and of course all the biobanks that joined us this morning to participate in the debate, know that you have this tool, that unique tool in Portugal called Coimbra Health, that could bridge you up, could link you up with the M8 Alliance, that I repeat is really the Champions League of the medical institutions all over the world. My participation in this adventure, being a diplomat and still in active service, is related to the simple fact that it happened by chance that I was, by coincidence, the ambassador of Portugal in Germany, in Berlin, at the time when Coimbra made the bid, a successful bid, to become a member of the M8 Alliance. So my pleasure to be here with you today to share this personal testimony and experience, but most important of all, to invite you to use the potential of Coimbra Health in order to bring to the forefront of the M8 Alliance debate the importance of biobanks and, as the name of this panel goes, the importance of building bridges. Thank you very much.
Well, I think we had a very, very interesting morning. And I would like to congratulate Paulo Nunes Abreu and Digital Health Portugal for this initiative. I have to thank all the speakers for the important and inspiring interventions that we had. I have some notes that I was taking during this morning, and I think as a conclusion, I would like to stress some of ideas. First of all, let me thank Ambassador Luis Almeida Sampaio for his availability to be with us this morning, in spite of his busy schedule. I am honored to have Ambassador Luis Almeida Sampaio as the president of the Strategic Council of the Clinical Academic Center, and he had, as we know, an important, I would say, the role to Coimbra Health became part of the M8 Alliance, and we will never thank you enough for that and the opportunities that is giving us. This morning we talked a lot about challenges, but we talked a lot about opportunities. We talk about we need to connect biobanks. We need to European regulation is needed, of course. If we have the same regulatory environment, things will be easier. That's for sure. Patients associations are key stakeholders to design research projects because at the end of the day, the results are going to impact healthcare provided to patients. So they are key stakeholders. European data space. This European data space is an opportunity to link biobanks as well as patient clinical information. But we also know that to have European data space, we have to have a national data space. And we still don't have it in a lot of countries. For instance, we don't have it in Portugal. Health systems are designed to deal with risk, are not designed, with risk of family cancer syndromes. We know a lot about genetic cancer, but healthcare systems are more emergency oriented, and that's a problem. We have to change that. We have to change that because we have a lot of information. We are not doing the right things with information. As CEO of a teaching hospital, as Centro Hospitalar Universitário de Coimbra, I was talking with Bonnie Clipper a couple of minutes ago. I'm particularly interested in the impact of translational research to improve the quality of healthcare provided. My view is that biobanks and our biobank connected with others in Portugal and in Europe and in the world can play a huge role in that field, as we learn on Porto Study, for instance, by creating the conditions to support clinical and translational research projects that will transform the health value chain towards better clinical results, greater patient and staff satisfaction, and more efficiency and clinical effectiveness. That's what I take from this working session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me here to Coimbra. It's always such a beautiful town to be in, to visit. It's been an honor today to sit with all of you and learn more about the work of biobanks. I too am an operator of hospitals, so I wonder how much more we could become efficient or smarter at the care we provide if we actually utilize the outcomes of the studies, of the research, of the things that we can learn from biobanks. I wonder what more we can do if we actually amplify relationships and partnerships with more patient associations and utilize a human-centered design framework to actually leverage this work and truly create outcomes that improve patient longevity, improve patient quality of life, reduce the cost of care, or improve the efficiency of care. It certainly would help us as those that provide care to understand if a patient has a certain gene type, if we treat them with something that isn't likely to be effective, that's a waste of time and resources. Whereas if we knew exactly what would benefit them, it would save the patient, it would save time and money and efficiency. And I also wonder what the impact would be on the care providers, on the physicians, on the nurses. Around the world, we all struggle with workforce challenges. So I can't help but leave here today thinking about the impact we could potentially make on our workforce if we were smarter and more targeted about the care that we actually provided, or perhaps even the prevention. I think there's an amazing amount of work going on here. I'm going to go back today and reflect on how I can contribute to help tell a better story about all of the work that's going on with the biobanks, not only here in Coimbra or in Portugal, but around the world. There's a huge story to tell, and the communities and the patients don't understand the work that's going on and don't understand why they should donate their tissue, their blood, to further the research that will benefit them or perhaps their family or their community. So I think all of you are doing amazing work. I am grateful to be here and to be a part of this. And it feels like this is a very, very solid foundation to build upon, to move into the future, to do even more and bigger and better things. So thank you again for participating, for attending, for being here with us today. This has been an amazing event. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Pedro, very much. Appreciate your very gracious hospitality. So thank you.
You're all invited for lunch. Thank you.